Have you ever imagined waking up one morning and realizing that the world you thought was stable is anything but? The stores are still open, but the shelves are bare. Your bank app shows a balance, but it doesn't mean anything. Jobs vanished overnight. And yet, the sun still rises. The world keeps turning. This might sound like science fiction, some dystopian Netflix special. But here's the thing, it's not the future, it's the direction we're heading, and fast. In this video, we're going to dig deep into why capitalism, the system that built the modern world, isn't just struggling, it's unraveling. Not because of one sudden disaster, but because of pressure building up quietly for decades. Pressure from contradictions baked into the system itself. We're going to explore the psychology behind capitalism, the philosophy, the economics, and by the end of this journey, you'll see the most profound reason why this system can't last. Spoiler, it has less to do with money and everything to do with who we are as human beings. So buckle up. This isn't just a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. Let's start from the top.
Capitalism, at its core, is built on some pretty straightforward ideas. Private ownership, free markets, competition, and the pursuit of profit. And let's be honest, it's brought a lot of good. It's powered massive leaps in technology, medicine, infrastructure. We're living in an age of convenience and connection that would have seemed like magic just a few generations ago. But beneath that shiny surface, there's a problem. A deep structural paradox that's been growing for centuries. To really get it, we need to rewind a few hundred years. Adam Smith, the so-called father of modern economics, believed that if everyone acted in their own self-interest, a kind of invisible hand would guide the economy to work for the good of all. Sounds clean, logical, even elegant.
But even Smith wasn't naive. He warned that unrestrained greed could lead to moral collapse, to exploitation, to a society where the strong trample the weak. Fast forward to today, and that invisible hand? It's shaking under the weight of extreme inequality, environmental collapse, and social unrest. Capitalism was supposed to bring freedom, but ask yourself, freedom for who? And at what cost? Let's look at the numbers. According to the World Inequality Report, the richest 10% of people now control over 76% of global wealth. Meanwhile, half the planet, billions of people, are living on less than $6 a day. That's not a bug in the system. That is the system. We praise freedom, opportunity, and hard work. But when billionaires exist in the same world as starving children, can we still pretend the system is fair? How long can that imbalance last before something breaks? History gives us a clue. No economic system lasts forever. Feudalism ruled Europe for hundreds of years until revolutions flipped the table. The Roman Empire? A military and economic juggernaut until it crumbled under its own internal rot. Collapse doesn't always come suddenly. Sometimes it's slow. It creeps in, like a leak in the foundation.
And now, the signs are everywhere. Productivity is higher than ever, but wages? Stuck. People are working more hours, yet feeling more anxious, more disconnected, more exhausted. The middle class, once the heartbeat of capitalist societies, is fading like a ghost. Still, we're told to believe in the dream. If you just grind harder, sacrifice more, push further, you too can make it. But what if the dream is rigged? Let's go deeper. Psychologists like Erich Fromm, in his book The Sane Society, argued that capitalism doesn't just exploit our labor, it disconnects us from ourselves. In other words, we don't just become workers, we become products. valued for what we can produce, what we can buy, what we can show off online. Think about it. How often do you feel like your time is only valuable if it's making money? How often do you judge your worth by your productivity? That's not a fluke. That's capitalism rewiring how we see ourselves. It teaches us that we are only as valuable as what we output. And the result? A society drowning in anxiety, loneliness, and burnout.
But this isn't just theory. Look around. The housing market is a ticking time bomb. Student debt has trapped an entire generation. Job security feels like a thing of the past. And climate change, fueled largely by unregulated industrial growth, now threatens all life on Earth. Worst of all, trust in institutions, governments, corporations, even media is falling off a cliff. Because when a system no longer works for the many and only serves the few, that system becomes a lie we whisper to ourselves so we can sleep. Collapse at that point isn't a risk, it's a guarantee. And yet, we keep going. We scroll, we swipe, we consume, stuck in an endless loop of productivity and distraction. But maybe the escape isn't something out there. Maybe it's not another app, another hustle, another upgrade. Maybe the real escape is inward. What if the collapse of capitalism isn't the end? What if it's a beginning? Not a fall into chaos, but a call to evolve. Slavoj Žižek once said, "It's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism." Let that sink in. Why is it so hard to imagine a world beyond this system? Because capitalism isn't just an economy anymore. It's a belief system, a culture, even a psychological framework.
But like all belief systems, it can be changed. It can be replaced. Imagine this, a world not based on scarcity, but on cooperation, not built on ruthless competition, but shared purpose. A world where we measure value not by stock prices, but by well-being. Sound utopian? It's not. It's the next step. But before we can build it, we have to confront the illusions we've accepted as truth. Because once you see the cracks, you can't unsee them. And once you recognize the game, you can choose to stop playing by its rules. So let's talk about something deeper. Not just the economy out there, but what's going on in here. Because capitalism isn't just a system we live in. It's a system that lives in us, in how we think, in how we feel, in how we define ourselves. To really understand how capitalism keeps going, even as it harms so many, we have to look inward. Because what we're dealing with isn't just an economic model. It's a psychological ecosystem, a carefully crafted machine that taps into our deepest fears and desires. Ask yourself, why do we consume so much? Why do we chase brands, status symbols, the latest tech? Why do we keep upgrading, even when what we have still works? Is it really about the thing itself, or is it about something else? Belonging, identity, worth. Capitalism didn't invent desire, but it absolutely mastered the art of manipulating it. This goes all the way back to Sigmund Freud, and more importantly, his nephew Edward Bernays. Bernays basically took Freud's ideas and asked, how can we use this to sell stuff?
And what he figured out changed the world. He realized that to sell a product, you don't highlight what it does, you link it to what people feel. A car isn't just transportation, it's power. A perfume isn't a scent, it's sex appeal. A brand? It's a shortcut to identity. Suddenly, consumption becomes ritual. It's not about the product, it's about who we are when we use it. This is the genius and the trap
of capitalism. It doesn't force us, it seduces us. And in doing so, it reshapes the way we think about happiness, purpose, and even morality. We're taught that being productive is being good, that making money equals being successful, that resting is laziness, that simplicity is failure. But have you ever bought something just to feel like a better version of yourself? More respected, more admired, more lovable. And then, almost immediately, that feeling fades. That's not just you. That's the system working exactly as designed. Because here's the dark secret. Capitalism doesn't thrive on satisfaction. It thrives on dissatisfaction. It needs you to feel like you're not enough, that you're falling behind, that you need to catch up. The moment you're content, you stop spending. So the system trains us to chase more stuff, more likes, more status. And when that doesn't make us happy, we blame ourselves, not the system. Carl Jung talked about the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves we don't want to face. Capitalism exploits that shadow. It tells us, don't look inward, don't sit with discomfort, don't question why you're tired, anxious, or empty. Just buy something, achieve something, distract yourself. But the ache doesn't go away.
Because what we're trying to fill isn't a material void, it's a spiritual one. And that void, it's growing. Today's generation, the most connected in history, is also the most anxious, most depressed, most burned out. Why? Because when your self-worth is tied to your market value, every rejection becomes an existential crisis. Every failure feels like a verdict. We're no longer human beings, we're human resources, brands, algorithms, productivity machines. And that's not freedom, that's exploitation, disguised as opportunity. Take a look at hustle culture, gig work, turning your hobby into a side hustle, monetizing your every moment. This isn't freedom, it's survival. We're told to be our own boss, but really, we're never off the clock. We hear things like, time is money. If you're not growing, you're dying. Grind now, rest later. But life isn't a business model. You are not a spreadsheet. Your value can't be measured in profit margins.
Philosopher Byung-Chul Han, in his book The Burnout Society, describes something chilling. We're no longer oppressed by external forces. We oppress ourselves. We exploit ourselves. In the name of ambition, in the name of freedom, in the name of success. And when we collapse from exhaustion, we don't blame the system. We blame ourselves. We think, I'm not working hard enough. I need to optimize more. I should be more productive. But what if that's the trap? What if the system is designed to exhaust you, to keep you running on a treadmill that goes nowhere, to keep you just distracted enough to avoid rebelling, but just unsatisfied enough to keep consuming? What would happen if we stopped running? Not to give up, but to wake up, to see the game for what it is.
Because once you see it, really see it, you can start to take your power back. You can stop playing by rules that were never meant for your benefit. You can stop blaming yourself for a system that needs you to feel broken. And that's where things get really dangerous for the system. Because the moment people wake up, they start imagining something better. But before we can do that, we have to face one last illusion, maybe the biggest one of all, the myth of meritocracy. This is the idea that success is purely about talent, intelligence, and hard work. It's what makes the dream believable. Anyone can make it if they just try hard enough. And that's comforting. It gives us hope. But here's the problem. It's not true. Not in the world we live in. Economist Thomas Piketty's research shows something clear. Left unchecked, capital grows faster than wages. In other words, wealth creates more wealth, not through effort, but through ownership, through access, through inheritance, through a system designed to keep the wealthy wealthy.
So when we praise billionaires as geniuses and judge the poor as lazy, we're reinforcing a lie. A lie that protects those at the top and blames those at the bottom. It's not that some people don't work hard. Of course they do. But hard work alone doesn't explain why one person is a billionaire and another is homeless. That's not merit. That's structure. That's power. And millions still believe the myth because the alternative is terrifying. Because if the dream is fake, then what are we even working for? But here's the thing. A dream built on denial isn't liberation. It's just another cage. And now, the cracks in that dream are showing. Every protest, every economic crisis, every wave of burnout and disillusionment, they're not random. They're signals. They're alarms going off, saying this system is breaking down. But there's hope. And in the next part of this journey, we're going to explore that hope, the alternatives, the experiments already happening, the blueprints of a new world, one not driven by greed, but grounded in humanity. A world that doesn't just survive collapse, but grows from it.
So now that we've seen the cracks, the psychological traps, the inequality, the myth of meritocracy, the question becomes, what do we do now? We know the system is unsustainable. We know the promises aren't being kept. And we know deep down, something's gotta change. But what comes after collapse? Here's the truth. Collapse doesn't have to be the end. It can be a beginning. Painful? Yes. Messy? Definitely. But it can also be a doorway into something more alive, more human, more just. Because every great collapse in history has carried within it the seeds of something new. When feudalism fell, democracy and human rights took root. When empires crumbled, new forms of governance emerged. And when the Great Depression shook the world, people demanded and won massive reforms. Labor laws, social safety nets, public infrastructure. Crisis forces reckoning. It breaks illusions, and it gives people permission to imagine again. Well, we're in that moment right now. But this time, the stakes are even higher. This isn't just about banks failing or jobs disappearing. This is about the planet itself.
The climate crisis isn't coming. It's already here. Rising temperatures, collapsing ecosystems, unbreathable air, all driven in large part by unchecked capitalist growth. And here's the core contradiction. Capitalism depends on infinite expansion, but Earth has finite resources. You can't keep extracting from a system that doesn't replenish itself. Infinite growth on a finite planet leads to one result: collapse. So again, we ask, what now? More and more people are refusing to accept the old narrative. They're exploring new models. Not perfect, not complete, but different, possible. Movements for degrowth are saying, let's stop measuring success by how much we produce and start focusing on how well we live. Circular economies are asking, what if we reused, shared, and regenerated instead of always consuming and discarding? Indigenous knowledge, long ignored or romanticized, is being rediscovered as a blueprint for balance.
not as nostalgia, but as survival. And let's be clear, these aren't fringe ideas anymore. Young people are turning away from traditional definitions of success. They want meaning, not just money, connection, not just careers. They're quitting toxic jobs, starting co-ops, building mutual aid networks, choosing to live with less and finding more. Even entire countries are rethinking their values. Take Bhutan, for example. They measure national progress through gross national happiness, not GDP. Or look at cities experimenting with participatory budgeting, community-owned land, and local currencies, all ways to keep power and wealth close to the people. These are cracks in the old system, but they're also pathways to a new one.
But here's the thing no one likes to say out loud. The biggest obstacle to change isn't economics or politics, it's the stories we believe about human nature. Capitalism survives not because it's the best, but because we've been told there's no other way. We've been sold a myth that humans are inherently selfish, that we need competition to be motivated, that greed is inevitable, that without hierarchy everything falls apart. But these are not facts, they're stories, and stories can be rewritten. Anthropologist David Graeber once pointed out that for most of human history, humans didn't live under markets. We lived through mutual aid, reciprocity, shared resources. Capitalism isn't our natural state, it's a recent invention. We are not hardwired for domination. We are hardwired for connection, for creativity, for meaning. That's why this collapse, as terrifying as it is, might be necessary, because the system isn't just failing, it's too small for the spirit of who we're becoming.
Because the system isn't just failing, it's too small for the spirit of who we're becoming. So what does that mean for you? What can you do? Let's bring it back to Earth. Real change doesn't begin in boardrooms. It begins in homes, in hearts, in the small, radical decisions we make every single day. It looks like this: slowing down, not because you earned it, but because rest is a human right. Creating art, stories, music, not for algorithms, but for healing. Supporting your local food systems. Refusing to reduce your life to a resume. Teaching your kids that their value isn't based on grades, income, or output, but on kindness, courage, imagination. Saying no to systems that exploit even when it's inconvenient. Saying yes to the people and practices that build you up, even if they don't scale. We don't dismantle capitalism just by protesting in the streets. We dismantle it by building communities that make it irrelevant, by choosing relationships that aren't transactional, by redefining success, by refusing to see each other as human capital and instead just as human. And yes, that sounds idealistic, but idealism isn't weakness. It's the courage to dream when the world tells you to settle.
Think of the fairy tales we tell our kids. There's always a kingdom in crisis, a spell cast over the land, a ruler corrupted by greed. But eventually, someone wakes up, the curse is broken, harmony is restored. What if we are in that part of the story? What if the spell is breaking, not in a single moment, but piece by piece? And what if this pain, this chaos, this unraveling isn't the end, but the labor pains of something better being born? Because all around the world, something is waking up. In the forests of the Amazon, in worker co-ops in Spain, in online communities building without borders,
in classrooms, in kitchens, in protests, in quiet acts of courage. A new rhythm is emerging, one rooted not in extraction, but in return, not in fear, but in connection, not in domination, but in care. So, yes, capitalism may collapse, and maybe it should. But what rises in its place, that's up to us. Not overnight, not without mistakes, but brick by brick, day by day. Not driven by profit, but by love. Not by control, but by co-creation. This collapse doesn't have to be a fall. It can be a flight, a return to what really matters. So let's stop asking, will capitalism collapse? And start asking, what will we build when it does? Because the most powerful force in the world isn't the market. It isn't the state. It's the human heart, fully awakened. Let's begin.